Hello, welcome to the Loco Builder. Today I've got a kit review for you. It's the London Road models, kit number 088, and it's a GNR D1 or LNER BRD2. So you've got three options of eras that you want to build this, so right from the 1920s all the way through to the 1950s and 60s. It's a 4mm scale kit, so that means it can be built in EM, P4 or double O gauges. That's possible with all of the components within this kit, and it is just for the kit itself. The retail price is £120. That doesn't include the wheels or the gearbox or the motor, so on first impression it might seem a little bit on the pricey side, but then if you consider what I think is a very good quality kit and the fact that this is not available in ready to run, then actually I think this represents pretty good value for money. We'll go ahead now and have a look inside the box and see what we get. So, opening the lid then, first thing that we see is some instructions. Let's have a look at those, get rid of the kit. So, here we are, just to show you briefly what we get. Quite a few printed pages, which is nice to see, and then just at the back here, I won't show you all of the instructions, but we do get some diagrams, which is very useful indeed. Working through there, just showing you how the bodywork is laid out, and we actually use a jig with this kit to build the framework of the top part of the locomotive. And we continue here with, once more, a few more very nice clear drawings there, so that's very nice to see. So, nice set of instructions, very comprehensive looking, and plenty of guidance provided within the kit. Also included is the tender. We'll have a look at that in a moment. That's a separate kit essentially. So first of all, we have a rolled boiler. Very nice to see that it's already pre-rolled. There's a nice tab along the back or the bottom side of the boiler box there, and it's, I can see, etched in very nice thin brass, so that's good to see. We have a very nice bag of gloss wax brass castings. They look to be very nicely detailed and very usable for the locomotive that you intend to build. There's obviously a couple of options in there for variations of locomotives that you might wish to build. Here are the castings for the front of the smoke box and also the back head of the boiler. They're done in white metal. Onto the etches themselves then, we have the etchings for the chassis frames themselves and also that jig that I was talking about earlier. So that's kind of like a sacrificial jig that you simply bend up, and that helps you form the shape of the footplate. Nicely etched in nickel silver this time. One observation that I would make with these particular kits is that if you're building in double O, just be very careful with the frame spacings. They are typically a little bit wide on these kits, so just check the frame spacing. It depends on how much side play you want in the wheels, but that is something to bear in mind. Sometimes these are set up more for EM or P4, and so what that can mean is that the wheel clearance, if you build in double O, are sometimes a bit tight. So just pay attention to that when you build this kit, but otherwise this is all very nice and crisply etched in nickel silver, and nickel silver is actually a little bit easier to solder in general than brass, so that's very nice to see that done. Everything's very crisp, and I just casting my eyes over this, I can't see any telltale signs of cusping or any ragged edges, so that looks to be very good quality indeed. Moving on now to the brass components of the kit. Again, very finely etched. We've got half etched relief detail there, and once more I can't see any cusping or any signs of overly thick brass. The thickness of the brass is really nice, and it should be solid enough and still give us a great deal of finesse. There's the footplate that will require bending up using the jig, and all of the parts that I can see there are very crisp and very clean indeed. Finally, here we have the piece where the boiler would have come from. They've just cut that out and rolled it up for us, and then I guess these are smoke box wrappers which will just need to be attached to the front of the locomotive when we build it all up. Finally here, also in nickel silver, we've just got the saddle for the smoke box there and a couple of other detail parts that we're going to add on to our kit. Let's now take a look at the tender. So here we are then, we You have a nice little instruction booklet there, just detailing in text what we need to actually do in order to build this kit. Nice little diagram there of the parts that are included on the frets themselves. Little picture there, and a couple of little diagrams just to help you sort out where everything's going to go on the particular model. I've included there a nice little bag of white metal castings for the axle boxes. They look to be actually very crisp and sharp. There's not a great deal of flash on those, so nice and easy to clean up and nice and easy to work with. So here's the etching for the tender. As you can see, I don't know whether you can see, but that says 1992 down there, so it's fairly old. But again, it's a nice gauge of brass. And I just noticed on the back, obviously this tender needs to be formed to shape. There's no half etching on this one, so it might be interesting to see how that's actually done. But again, a nice thickness of brass and a very nice clean etch on that one. Further tender casting here. There is some relief there for bending up the flare of the tender top, I can see, and also some nice detail there included in the tender frames themselves. So I'm sure, yes we do, we've got here rivet detail that we can punch out from behind to give the tender a nice bit of relief detail on there. Again, a nice thickness of brass, very good to see, and no sign of cusping or anything else nasty like that, so cleanup should be very easy on this particular kit. And finally here we have the little frames, or the chassis for the tender itself. Very small, just gives you an idea. That's probably about 4 inches long there, the tender, so quite a small tender on this particular locomotive, but yeah, no problems with that whatsoever. Just to round out the full contents of this kit then, also included are some very nice 4mm scale sprung buffers. We also get various nuts and screws just to fix the locomotive body to the chassis, handrail knobs, and then a selection of different thickness brass wire just for things like handrails and brake rigging as well. Overall then, I would say this is a very nicely designed kit, very well thought out. I like little touches like the fact that the boiler is already rolled for us. That aids us to build it. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's for the beginner. Use of things like the jig to build the footplate makes things a little bit more complicated, but overall, with a bit of thought and a bit of determination, this should build into a really nice kit. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, about the frame spacing for 00 models if you're building this as a 00 kit, and also make sure to use the drawing on the front of the box to measure out your placement of the gearbox and the motor. It might be a bit of a tight fit potentially, so just make sure that you take your time and choose a motor and gearbox that fit nicely inside. The other final thing I would mention on this one is, because we've only got 2 driving wheels, it's probably a good idea to rig up some sort of tender pickup system to enable better continuity and better running for the model. In terms of the motor, I'd probably go for a 10 or 12 series Machima just to make sure it fits in between the frames. And for the driving wheels, you need 6'7.5" driving wheels, so they're quite large, and that's what you'll need to complete your model. Bearing in mind, of course, this isn't available in ready to run. I think this kit represents very good value for money. It's from a UK supplier, and I think that if we want to keep the future of kit building alive and have these wonderful models offered to us in kit form, then the least we can do is support these suppliers and purchase from them accordingly. I'll put all the links in the video description down below. I hope you're inspired to have a go at building a kit that you might have lying around. In the meantime, enjoy your modelling, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.